Welcome back, Covalence friends, to part one of a series where we'll be creating a signable signature field using Canvas. Now, this is definitely like a level 0 advanced tutorial, especially this part one video. I mean, all we're going to be doing is setting up the canvas in the DOM. But I put it in advance because there are a few things that will be coming later on that I feel like are probably a little bit above the intermediate level in terms of like level of understanding. But whether you're advanced, intermediate, or even beginner, I highly encourage you to watch this. And if you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comments section and we will be sure to answer them. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to go ahead and use our Express template. We just cloned the repo and npm installed, so now we're ready to go. Let's open up our index.html, and the first thing we're going to do is just change this title. So let's just call it signature, and this h1 we're going to say sign here, do a little colon, and underneath it we're going to put our canvas. All right. Now on our canvas, we actually want to define our width and our height. So I'm going to define it as 600 by 300, and if we just left it as this, it probably would use the pixels. It would actually show it as 600 by 300 pixels by default. But it's not actually referencing the width and the height that we'll see on the page. What it is actually kind of referencing the density of the canvas itself. So when we reference like a point in our context, when we in our JavaScript, let's say we're going to draw a rectangle, we tell it to go to an XY point to draw that rectangle. Our max X point is going to be 600 and our max Y point is going to be 300, right? Now this won't reflect on our DOM because we're going to define it separately. We're going to define this canvas in CSS and it will change the width and the height. It's not going to be 600 by 300 pixels, which you'll see in a second. But what we do need to keep in mind, if we don't want our canvas drawings to be skewed at all, we will have to keep our CSS to always be the 2-to-1 ratio. So with that in mind, let's go to our CSS and we're going to, let's first give a little background color to the body. We'll say F0, F0. It's kind of like a semi-light gray. H1, we're going to do a text line center. And let's give it a little underline action in there as well. And let's say margin, let's do 1em0. And for the body, we don't want margin collapse, so let's just give the body a padding of 1em all the way around. And let's see, what else do we have? Just our canvas left, right? So for our canvas, let's just do the display is going to be block, the background color, not origin, color is white, and we're going to have, let's see, our width defined. So what we can actually do here, if we define width and height as, 80ems and 40ems, this is fine, but if we were to shrink it down to mobile, it probably, it wouldn't look good. 80ems is pretty wide. It's wider than a phone, most likely. And so you'd have overflow, you'd have, this scrolling action, which would look kind of bad. And so what we can do is most browsers nowadays support viewport width units, and we can redefine our width, and we can leave the other M's in there just in case, for whatever reason, the browser doesn't support it. But if we do width and height and viewport width units, so we'll do 40 VW here. Now that ratio is always going to be maintained, and as you shrink the width of the screen, it'll always maintain, or always be 80% of the width of the screen, basically, right? So, and this will always be 40% of the width of the screen. So it should maintain the ratio, and as you shrink it, right, it'll actually resize itself. And if it doesn't support viewport width units, then you're going to have a little bit of scrolling action. But I wouldn't worry too much about that because almost all browsers nowadays support that. And then let's just do a little bit of border radius, give it kind of that signature field or signature box look. And finally, we'll do margin 0 auto just to center this thing. All right, and then we're going to open up our terminal and we're going to npm run dev. And listening on port 3000, let's open up port 3000 and bam. All right, so we have this giant box here. It is ready to go in terms of actually being able to sign. It takes up almost the whole screen, but if we were to shrink this thing, you can actually see that it does shrink as the browser shrinks, right, and grows as the browser grows. So we have almost exactly what we want here. Now we're going to go ahead and just see if we can test this thing real quick. So let's go ahead and open up our JavaScript file, and we'll remove the express rocks. And instead, we're going to get our canvas. So we can document.query selector. I'm not sure why that's the default selection, but we'll go ahead and query selector canvas. If you wanted to add an ID and use, get element by ID, you could do that. But again, we only have one canvas on this page, so I'm not worried about it. And we're going to cast this to an HTML canvas element. So now it knows that it's an HTML canvas element. And we're going to now grab our context. So context is going to be canvas.getContext. And it's going to be our 2D context. And we can say if not context, then we'll console.log no canvas. Frowny face. All right, otherwise we know that our context exists. And did we return? We did return. So we know our context exists, so now we can actually do something like context align with equals 10. So we can actually set align with now. And we can actually play around a little bit. We'll probably end up deleting this. Let's just draw something real quick. Let's just say, let's see, I found something online here. Pull it up. All right, so I have no idea if this is going to work, but it should work. So we're going to stroke a rectangle. It probably won't be centered, but for all demonstration purposes, we're just going to draw something kind of cool here. 150, 110. Dot fill rect, 130, 190, 40, and 60. All right, then we're going to ctx.begin path, and we're going to draw a little path. So we're going to move to a point, and I'll explain exactly what's happening here in a second. Give me a second to type all this out. Line 2, 150, 60. We're going to ctx.line 2. 250, 140, and we're going to close the path here, and finally we're going to stroke. All right, so what's going on here? We're stroking a rectangle, which is basically going to be a hollow rectangle, right? So it's just going to be the outline of a rectangle. If you look at the definition here, it has x, y with height, so we're actually going to the point 75, 140, and then we're defining a width and a height. We're doing a filled rectangle here. So we're going to the point 130, 190, and then we're going to do a 40 by 60 rectangle that is filled in. Then we're going to create a path, right? So we begin a path, and we're going to move to a point, right? So this is an XY point. Remember, our canvas is 600 by 300, right? Then we're going to line to this point. So we're going from this point to this point. We're drawing a line. All right, so our context actually stays at the point 150, 60. Then we're going to line to 250, 140. So we're going from 150, 60 to 250, 140, right? And then we're going to close the path. So it's going back to 50, 40. So this code right here is basically creating a triangle. Then we're going to stroke that, right? So we're stroking it with this line width of 10. All right. Now, can anybody guess what we're drawing here? No? Drop it in the comments. I'll wait. All right, I'm done waiting. And we're going to go ahead and, whoa. All right, so we have this crazy hat. Clearly I did something wrong. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I did wrong. 130, 190, 40, 60, 50. This is the problem. I forgot a 1. All right, so 150, 60, 250, 140. All right. I kind of like this better, but it's a house. Bam. So here's our triangle. Before, honestly, I kind of liked the house with the skewed hat. But regardless, we have our little house here, sign here. So we're going to be drawing. Now, obviously, this line width is a little wide for a signature. So we're probably going to be changing that. But just to show you exactly how easy that is, we change the line width. All right, it recompiles. And bam, the entire thing is skinnier, more narrow. And still, that could actually work for the signature itself, but honestly, for a signature, you're probably going to want something more like 2. All right, and yes, so that'll probably be the line width that we use. So we're set up for next time. And until then, if you guys have any questions regarding, setting up this context or setting up the canvas itself, please be sure to let us know. But as you can see, the canvas still stays 600 by 300, even though the pixel size of it changes as you change the screen, right? So that's the importance of defining that width and the height on the canvas element itself. All right. All right, so like I said before, definitely a level 0 advanced tutorial. I think things will get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun as we get into the later parts of this tutorial series. But make sure that you subscribe so that you get the notifications as we release these parts. And if you have any questions or any additional comments or suggestions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.